Hello and welcome to this election special episode of Media Dialogues with Storyboard 18. I am Delshad Irani, and today I have with me in the studio a power-packed panel to decode the media strategies of top advertisers and glean insights from their winning campaigns in what promises to be a blockbuster season. We have with us Ajay Dang, who is the President and Head of Marketing at Ultratech Cement. We have Gaurav Ramdev, Chief Marketing Officer of Protean eGov Technologies, Mohit Joshi, CEO of Havas Media Group India, and we also have with us in the studio Network 18's consulting editor, Rahul Shivshankar. Hello, it's a pleasure to have you all here, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. And Rahul, straight off the bat, I'm going to come to you. And this is not, I'm not going to get straight into the main point of this conversation, but I really want to ask you this. You know, for us Indians, our heart beats as much for cricket as it does for politics, right? And there isn't a bigger thing than elections in the country. So just sum it up for us, sum up the feeling for us. You know, what the magnitude of the event, the impact of the event, and give us the view from the newsroom.
Yeah, so there are two IPLs, you know. There's the Indian Political League and, of course, the Premier League, the Cricket League. This is the greatest show on earth. I mean, you know, 1 billion people almost come out and they vote and they elect a government that is going to determine 1/8 of humanity's destiny for 5 years. I don't see that anywhere in the world on the scale that it sort of manifests itself here. It's the greatest affirmation of the power of one vote, and that counts. And it is counting in ways that have made India today one of the world's leading democracies. I mean, so much so that over the last few years, we've even changed our complete approach towards how we view ourselves. Now we call ourselves the mother of democracy. It used to be America that used to lay claim to that, but have you seen the shambles that they're in? Look, there will be people, obviously, who will talk a little bit about the other side, you know, the not so rosy side, the side that seems to suggest that the vote and election doesn't count anymore. I mean, there are political arrests going on. There are, of course, unfortunate events that come together which seem to suggest that one side has become much more overbearing than the other, that there's no level playing field. But just set the rhetoric aside and focus on one figure, and that's the 70% plus electoral turnout. That doesn't happen in democracies that are functional. We've just seen an election in a country where very few people showed out to vote, and I'm talking about Russia. Before that, another country which was thought to have overtaken India economically a few years ago, Bangladesh, for example, they had a sub 50% voter turnout. In fact, it was 35 or 38%, if I haven't got that wrong, subject to, of course, a quick hard fact correction. But I think it was somewhere in that high 30s. And that tells you that there was really no faith. I mean, Pakistan also, the turnout was so low. Of course, that's a dysfunctional basket case. I'm not trying to equate India with that. But I'm just suggesting where people are really cynical with democracy, they just don't show up to vote. In fact, in urban India today, those numbers that used to be once at around 48, 40, 50%. Bombay always used to get this sort of shtick for not going out there and voting. Today, even in Bombay, you have 60% plus engagement, which tells you that people really think that their vote has a determining influence on our destiny. Why would so many people be showing up? So this is a massive party. It's a festival. Some people call it the dance of democracy. Well, that's maybe a shibboleth, but it is certainly an upsurge of democracy in one massive corner of the earth, and the world notices.
Absolutely. And you, Ajay, you heard that, right? So you have the Indian Premier League, and then you have the Indian Political League. It doesn't get bigger than this. Now, tell me from an advertiser's point of view, you heard some of the numbers that Rahul shared as well. And of course, we are all watching this as well as participating in it. From an advertiser's point of view, tell me how you view this election season.
So
What is the crux of your, marketing strategy, the objective, your media plan?
So we come from an industry which is very, very deep rooted into India's development. And to an extent, I agree with Rahul that it's a conversation about the future course of the country, about the development of the country. We are a very large consumer-driven company, about 70% directly talking to consumers, about half of that coming from rural. There, the developmental conversation is very, very focused, and people are resetting their ambition, people are resetting their aspiration. We are a very young country. And to participate in that, so one piece is just looking at it as advertisers. We believe that Ultratech and the role that we play is into the development of the country, right? It's a strong enabler in terms of resetting the bottleneck of human potential. If that's the piece that we go for, I think we are active participants in the discussion. And I think, like you said, where we are obviously, as marketers, we are obviously hunters for attention. So we are harvesting where the attention is, and rightly so, on the future of India.
Gaurav, it's interesting because, with Protean, you're perhaps a little fresh to the election season in many ways, recently listed. Tell me how you are viewing how are you calibrating your media strategy?
Sure.
It is the biggest, perhaps, televised event as well,
Yes.
the elections.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? Where are you putting your money?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Rahul puts it as two IPLs. It should be two. I mean, I would not compare them, but if I have to talk from a marketeer's point of view, marketeer's vantage point, I think it's important to understand cultural context in India, and in Indians' cultural context, I think these 5 passion points really matter: cricket, politics, religion. Bollywood, and the 5th, which comes once in 5 years, which is the election. So
In that order?
Not at all, not at all. So if I look at as an opportunity from a marketeer's perspective, this would be one of those mega years where you have not one, but 2 opportunities to impact stummers, create an impact property that lingers on, the opportunity to create slightly long format campaigns rather than just short-term, medium-term impact campaigns. So as a marketer, there are several opportunities to harvest, like Ajay said. From a Protean standpoint, I think it was a difficult choice. It was a difficult choice for us to make on what would be the right place to advertise and go after, because we are a young brand and we wanted to create a larger impact. While I can't share the details, but we are still evaluating on how we can activate elections, which is going to be a three-month time period, and do it the right way. As I often tell my teams, I think while strategy always is great to have, I think execution matters in these large mega events that happen. Because if you get the execution right, then I think it makes for continues to give back for a very long time. So we are right now in conversations to have an execution in place, which matters, and we are seeing this as an opportunity that we can harvest.
Absolutely. Mohit, of course, you have this sort of wide view across the spectrum of advertisers. Tell me, in terms of, say, the returns on investments, especially with the election season, coinciding, of course, with the IPL, what is the sense that you're getting from your clients and advertisers in terms of where they see most potential when it comes to media vehicles?
So it's a very good situation to be in, where you have 2 very big properties that you can ride on. 2 IPLs, as Rahul very relevant.
That's going to stick. That's going to stick. Yeah.
And in my view, what happens is every client wants to be on IPL, but they don't have the kind of budgets that are required to have a good presence there. Now with elections also happening alongside, the eyeballs are going to be split. But there is a very good opportunity in the elections for those clients who are not able to ride on IPL. So in my view, it's it's the best of both worlds. And I have been seeing with my clients and many other clients that I have been evaluating, that they have either put their monies behind IPL or behind election, and some of them who can afford it behind both of them, because both converge audiences, and they are pretty big, I would say, reach environments in themselves. So in my view, as an advertising agency professional, I'm very happy that I have two opportunities instead of one to get my clients in the quarter one. The other important thing is that from a return on investment perspective, IPL has always delivered. In spite of the fact that it has very high CPTs and the rates are high, but in the last so many years, whenever a client has used IPL for either launch or sustenance, it has always worked from a brand equity parameters perspective. So I've never seen a client fail on IPL. At the same time, elections is something that will drive viewership for sure. And if you are on elections, the viewership is guaranteed. So I think both of them are equally good in their own rights.
There's one elephant in the room we've forgotten.
Tell me.
So, in the Indian political league, guess what are the biggest brands? Any guesses here?
The parties.
The political parties. And what are they doing? They're in the ad game too.
Yeah.
So he talks about how in the cricket IPL, a client always gets return on investment. One of the biggest advertisers for media entities, like, for example, news channels, are also, of course, political parties. And they also get return on investment.
Rahul, let me ask you this. Of course, the window to all of this action are our screens, and especially our television screens, and it's 24/7. Tell me, how important is the news genre when it comes to sort of, getting the attention of audiences, making sure they're listening to the right things, as well as, tell me a little bit about the kind of content that sticks. You spoke about, we heard Ajay talk about how they want to not just advertise, but be part of a conversation. So give me that perspective from you.
That's a very good question, actually. Look, first of all, let's just situate this election. This election is a pivotal election in our history. So there's a lot more interest. A lot of people say, oh, because the outcome is foregone, there is not that excitement. But actually, the outcome may be foregone, some people say, in the aspect of who's winning, but it's certainly not foregone on where we are going to go as a nation. So, till now, for 75 years, we've written the history of India. Someone now says, hey, elect me Prime Minister, I'm going to script the history of Bharat's Itihas. Completely different. They sound different and the focus is different. So, first of all, let's understand what this election is about. This is about a pivot to a part of our country that we actually squirreled away and never looked at. And there's a huge amount of people in that quadrant that are aspirational, as he began by saying, and are looking to be heard. So, a lot of Indians today are not wanting to hear me during election season. Yes, when there's a big controversy, there's been an arrest of a big politician, there's been one about a couple of weeks back, there are seizures that are taking place of certain political parties, monies, etc., and people, will turn to an anchor, and if the anchor is in the business of giving hard facts, they'll say, what does this mean in the larger context of how it's being sort of played out by various political parties? What are we supposed to make of it? So they'll come to me. But actually, they want to hear what the people want to say, and that's where programming needs to focus. It has to take people who are sitting in their living rooms, who come back home, out amongst the people. So all the IPs that you create at this time are about being amongst the people. Now, you have various versions of it. You can have nukkar shows, as they're called, or you can hit constituencies, or you can have these massive sort of staged events where there's a huge live audience and you do it in the square of a town or a village or a jurisdiction where you can have that interface. You go out with politicians to stand behind them, to see how they're looking at a particular constituency. The camera is really over their shoulder, so you get a view of what they're looking at, how the people are reacting to them, what is their messaging. So it's really about immersion.
Immersive, yes.
The other thing that one has to keep in mind, and I'll be very quick, is that it's not just anymore the 32-inch box. So there are people out there who have sometimes as much viewership as an anchor on a traditional news channel. And they're doing something completely different. So not only are they building perspective, but they're also amongst people in a manner that you, as a professional journalist, can't be. Because you are ascribing to certain standards. They're asking questions which perhaps I would be too wary of asking, but they're really getting into those questions that feed into various prejudices. People like to hear that kind of chatter. You have a lot of little IPs that go on digital only. And then you have the traditional sort of news programs where you go out and you do your shows and, you know, it's more structured, etc. So that's the kind of stuff that we do.
True, absolutely. And what I'm also getting, of course, in marketing terms is that customer centricity, right? Absolutely. You don't lose that. So Gaurav, for you again, you know, when it comes to, you know, some of the things that Rahul mentioned, Ajay mentioned, Mohit mentioned, in fact, also, how do you see screens? You know,
Absolutely.
It's television, it's digital, but that news, that constant sort of churn of news and the number of, you know, perspectives out there, conversations happening out there, how do you sort of, you know, sift through all of that?
Yeah. So, before I begin, I think, Rahul, you should consider a career in marketing, for sure. But, okay, seriously, I think it's, as marketers, it's our responsibility, and especially as leading marketers, it's our responsibility to follow the consumers. And no doubt about your previous question, no doubt this is going to be a festival unlike any other. And therefore, it's, so news definitely makes sense from a media strategy perspective. It's how you activate through several options that are available. And what is the purpose behind activation? If that's very clear, I think news will definitely have a role to play. Now, how do you put the big lens? So let me start at a 50,000 feet level. I think if you have to view this season, the 3 months that are going to come in, it's going to be relentless from a marketer's point of view, because there would be those large moments, the large narratives that Rahul was talking about, which are going to be in focus and going to be in the moment, real time. And then there are going to be sustenance, which are the micro-marketing, as I call it, which you would want to circle back as a marketer, because those moments, like today, if a very simple narrative, you see something on television, by the time you realize this is the moment, aha, in the next 1 hour, that edited piece, that small bit of information flows through your WhatsApp, at least 25 groups, right? And therefore, it's going to be a large narrative on how you capture that through the media plans that you build, through the excessive planning that you do. But it's also going to be about moment marketing, on what you can capture right after, and then circle back.
Really leverage that.
And really leverage that and build a sustenance piece around it. And both these have to be operated, like in marketing words, we call it the war room. So we literally operate a war room of 3 months, so that we can capture both those. I wish I could be in a position and say that we capture everything that's possible and this thing, but we are obviously humans, and every passing year, every election year, when such 2 large campaigns are happening, there is a learning curve, and you try and bring all of your learnings to this to make it a successful.
Absolutely.
I have a slightly different take to that. And it's no wonder, I think, you mentioned going outside, and I think most times what you see in news is, right, the warring boxes kind of stuff. And ratings go up when you go to the masses, right? Yeah, somewhere, some correlation there. But I think different conversations are happening at different levels. One is you have the political parties kind of stuff. You're looking head versus head. You're looking party versus party. You're looking the maths. What's the conversation? Rather than look at it purely as an opportunistic point where audience interest goes up, I think you've got to stand back and possibly ask yourself question, what's the narrative that you want to dial up? Marketers want to do that, right? What's the what's the piece that you want to accentuate, and what do you want to tag yourself to, rather than just say, okay, there is a lot of noise and let me be present where the crowd is. I think the piece is, it's a great opportunity. Each piece, each IP, each conversation that media has, I think it's a great opportunity for you to think through so rather than be part of the conversation that this great country has, rather than saying, okay, they're just ad rates and so on and so forth. I think we've got to be slightly more strategic as to what level of conversation and what tenor of conversation do you want to attach yourself to.
True.
That, I think, would be far more productive, I think, is the take that we take, kind of stuff, yeah.
No, extremely,
Absolutely.
extremely. I think I resonate with him. Whatever he said, in the act of it, I think brands should not forget the purpose that they are trying to fulfill. The narrative, like we all call it, love to call it, the narrative that we want to set. I think if the brand purpose is pretty clear and we keep going back to it again and again and telling that to ourselves, we don't get lost in execution. So setting the brand purpose and taking this as a
Right at
platform
this
to
point.
amplify that.
It's foundational.
So, for example,
Yeah.
just giving a kind of a little brass tacks to this. We just launched a campaign a little while back, Banega to Badega, right? Because the insight that we got there was that I think infra or development of any nature, I think the unique position India is in resets, not for you and me, not for people in the studio, but for villagers, for people who are running small businesses. It resets what's possible for them. Now, that kind of conversation is what you would want elections in this country to be about, or choice making in democracy to be about. And that's I think, far-reaching rather than just maybe the immediate event or the maths that goes around. Yeah.
True, true.
I
And
agree with
Mohit,
him
yeah.
on purpose being central, and in my view, purpose is the 5th P in marketing today, and very, very relevant. Unless you have purpose in anything that you do, the campaign will not stick. At Havas, we call it meaningful communication, because we realize that unless a brand is meaningful, tomorrow the consumer would
Switch out of it.
change and switch out of it and take some other brand. So while doing this, I think the purpose and the meaningfulness of the communication has to be kept in mind, because let's not forget that news is also very volatile. So, you have to be very careful of where your brand communication is. And that's where, I would agree with him on scheduling. Very simple things. On a negative day on a day of negative news, maybe the brand doesn't need to be there. On a day of positive news, the brand needs to be there.
Dial it up.
So to dial up. So it's a very tactical
Real
aspect.
time,
And he spoke about how the election campaigns and keep changing. Similarly, the brand campaigns also during elections have to change.
You have to be on the ball. You have to be on the ball.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great note to end on, Mohit. Your point about purpose, of course, being pivotal as the brands, advertisers leverage this large, epic moment in our history. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. It was lovely chatting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.